Hi guys, it's Rob from Royal Balls. We're a couple of weeks away from my first eggs of 2023 and many of you have asked about my incubator. Now bear in mind that I am living in the tropics and I could, at a pinch, incubate at room temperature, and in fact my maternal incubation clutch was incubated by the mum at room temperature and took 72 days to hatch, but hatch they did. I actually prefer the control that an incubator gives me, but my room is at approximately 30 degrees centigrade, so I only need to nudge the temperature a little bit to get it exactly where I need to be. That brings its own inherent problems and difficulties because it is such a small temperature variation. The control needs to be precise. Let's have a look. Alright guys, here is my incubator. It's currently switched off, although I have prepared egg boxes because I'm expecting eggs pretty soon, and you will see that my incubator, even with no heat at all, ambient temperature 30.1. So let's just have a quick look inside before I switch it on and test it. There is a pulse proportional thermostat at the bottom. It's a Habistat. Pulse proportional is important for me because I do want to meter the amount of electricity that goes in here, because obviously the temperature just needs a little bit of a nudge. It does not need a great deal of heat. So there's the thermostat on the bottom, and I have a number of shelves here. You'll see that they're all spread out. And what we have just above the bottles there is some heat cable, and there's only a few meters of heat cable. That's all I need. If you live in a colder climate you probably need more. I have no back heat either, but again, if you live in a colder climate you may find that you need more power. Water bottles on the next shelf, and they are actually pretty close to the heat cables. So the heat cables are going to stay at a constant temperature because of the pulse proportional thermostat. It is not on off, it pulses electric, so it keeps the temperature pretty constant. And by conduction, because they are actually touching the heat cables, these water bottles are also going to maintain a constant temperature at the bottom here, and that is my temperature buffer. If I need to go into the incubator for any reason and then close the door, I have these water bottles as a temperature buffer. Now the incubator itself has room for about 12 clutches actually, and when I first set this incubator up I found that there was a dead zone at the top. Incubators work by transferring heat by convection currents, which circulate air up here, and then as it cools it goes back down and is rewarmed. And I found that without a fan I was getting a dead zone at the top here of cooler air. So I added a fan, and it is a rather large USB fan, but I had to shop around for a USB fan that did not add any heat. I found using a conventional fan that just the heat from the fan motor itself caused the incubator to overheat, so I couldn't use just any old fan. This is a computer USB fan that does not add any heat, and yes, it does take up quite a bit of space, but it is effective and gives me an additional egg box on the top shelf here. All the rest would probably be just fine without a fan, but there is a fan to actually break up those convection currents, break up the dead zone at the top of the incubator here. Okay, so I have a thermostat with a humidity meter in there, which is already at 85% humidity with me doing absolutely nothing. So my egg boxes don't need a great deal of vermiculite, and I don't need to seal them with press and seal because the humidity is already quite high. And there is the probe from my thermostat just on top of the egg box here. Now because I'm only nudging temperatures, there isn't a great deal of temperature variation between the egg boxes, inside the egg boxes, outside the egg boxes, it's all pretty much the same temperature. If you live in a colder climate, you may find that your egg boxes are a different temperature to what's being measured inside your incubator. So your probe needs to go where the eggs are. It's the temperature of the eggs that is the important thing, not the temperature of your incubator. So if you do have a cooler ambient temperature and your incubator is having to work quite hard, put the probe inside the egg box and have your thermostat control the temperature in the egg box. You will probably find that your incubator is slightly warmer in order to warm up the egg boxes. So there you go, guys, that's my incubator. I'll put a link in the description below. When I built this incubator, it is still actually a fully functional drinks cabinet, and I could convert it back at any time. So pretty easy and straightforward to build. You can also see how I set up my egg boxes. I'll put a link in the description below. So I will be switching this incubator on in the next week or so and just checking to make sure that everything is stable, fine-tuning it as necessary, although I have used it for a whole season, so I expect to just turn it on and it's going to work just fine at the settings that I used last time. So there we go. We'll come back to this when we get eggs, and I'll show you putting eggs into the incubator once we get our first clutches for the year. So the incubator's been switched on for a day and it has been rock steady. The fan is working, you can see the blue light there, and I have checked to make sure the fan is working. And we always ignore what that says, and we use a calibrated heat gun to determine the temperature. 89.5 is perfect. Okay, so the incubator checks out, it's good to go. I can switch it off until just before the eggs arrive. Alright guys, I'll put links in the description to the video I made when I built this incubator and some of the science behind why it was built the way it is. I'll also put a link to my egg box setup so you can see when we get eggs how I put those in the incubator. My ambient conditions are already very humid, so I get by with a little less vermiculite than most people do, and I also don't have to use press and seal because inside my incubator is already at 80% humidity. So inside the egg box without any seal at all is perfectly adequate humidity for the eggs. I am actually increasing the temperature just a touch this year. My eggs typically take around 60 days to hatch, and I want to try and reduce that just a little by increasing the temperature by about ½ a degree. That's all it will take, and we'll see how that works. All my clutches hatch out pretty much regular as clockwork, so it is useful in gauging when I can cut my eggs, even though I like to wait until they pip. Sometimes if there's an issue, the eggs are a little bit late, I know, because my eggs usually hatch on schedule. So that's a good way to run your incubator. Once you have it set up and stable, don't change it. If it isn't broke, don't fix it. But you know me, we like to experiment. I'm bumping up by ½ a degree this year. We'll see what happens. Okay guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.